everyone, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm really excited to be here. And I am going to start things off with a presentation, and then we'll move into the cooking demo part. So I am going to share my screen. And as Silvana mentioned, this is all about lunch is served is the name of our topic. And I want to go ahead and want to thank both the Breast Cancer Resource Center, Rooted Santa Barbara, for coming together in this partnership and bringing wonderful programming on a monthly basis focused on the nutrition benefits of adding more plants onto our plate. And I like to help highlight how flavorful and tasty it can be. I just want to reiterate, while nutrition is paramount to long-term health, this class is not intended to provide medical advice, guidance, or treatment. If you have questions regarding specific conditions, treatment, or lifestyle changes, those should be discussed directly with your healthcare provider. Working in concert with your healthcare providers is the sure way to positive outcomes and healing. And so I like to come alongside and add a little education and entertainment to your lives, but you definitely want to be working with your healthcare provider. So here we are, lunch is served, and I kind of chose this background a little bit. It kind of reminds me of a cutting board. And I also kind of want to show, highlight for you that there are so many different ways that you can, whoops, my presentation kind of froze up on me here. So lunch to me can be a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it should be a beautiful thing because we serve our bodies food 3 times a day, but sometimes lunch is kind of this afterthought because it falls in the middle of the day when we might be really busy. But I'm going to be showcasing you some wonderful ideas of how you can make lunch be very important, nutritious, and also flavorful, but in a time-friendly way. So these are just some examples of some of the items that I actually eat at lunchtime. So why is it that we may have some lunchtime stumbling blocks when it comes to eating healthfully? And I put together some ideas of my own because I can relate to them. First of all, I don't have time to prepare nutritious food. Oh, well, I understand, because even before I ate more, what I would say healthfully, and was thinking about more consciously what I was putting on my plate, lunchtime to me was really, like I said, kind of an afterthought. It was, I need to make it quick and easy. And so I would just always maybe have some standard lunches, like a sandwich and some chips, or sandwich and some soup, sandwich and maybe a piece of fruit. And I didn't put much time and effort into my lunch because I just didn't think I had the time to do it. In today's presentation, during the cooking demo, I'll show you how I manage it in my household. I can't think of simple lunch ideas. And again, that's the focus of this actual class, is helping you to think of lunch ideas and maybe using some of the same staple ingredients, but in different ways. I get bored of the same foods. Well, I agree, especially if you were like me, always kind of falling back to a standard type of lunch meal. You can get bored of the same foods. But on top of it, you may want to, maybe it's your safety net. It's where you feel comfortable when you eat the same thing and you don't want to mix it up. But what I will try to show you here and present to you is there's a reason why we have a lunchtime meal. It's not just to bridge that gap between breakfast and dinner. It's actually a way to create diversity into our diet. And we want to put some focus and intention on our lunch meal and not let it just be an afterthought. Because like I said, if you're feeding yourselves 3 times a day and you opt not to maybe eat as healthfully or not pay as much attention to lunchtime, you're really kind of not giving your body what it needs to with that one meal. So you're only maybe feeding nutritiously 2 times a day when it really optimally it should be 3 times a day. It costs too much. And I would agree that if you're eating out a lot, maybe you're working, you don't have time to prepare you think you don't have time to prepare your meal, it can cost a lot if you're eating out. Also, if you are falling back onto, let's say you're trying to incorporate more plant foods and you're gravitating towards some of those transitions, like plant deli meats or things like that, they can be more costly. So I'm going to show you some ways that I use just simple staple ingredients that a lot of us have in our pantries and our fridges that don't cost a heck of a lot. I don't like to cook. I hear you. I hear you. If you're here and you're one of those folks, I used to be that way too. And I will admit that lunchtime, I don't like to cook either. So I am going to help support you and at least get you so that it's bearable for you. And I don't have time to eat my lunch. Again, this is something that we tend to, at lunchtime is the meal where we are maybe multitasking. We are, maybe it's, we're in a meeting or getting ready for a meeting and we are just wolfing down our food. That is not good for you to do that for a couple of reasons. One is you are kind of in that fight and flight mode and it does not allow you to digest your food well. Another thing is if you aren't digesting your food well and you're in that fight and flight mode and you are really highly stressed, you are not going to absorb all the wonderful nutrients either. So I would say, let's take the time, breathe a little bit before you consume your lunch. So one of the ways that you can immediately just kind of elevate your lunch and make it more nutritious is following 2 techniques that I love to teach, and that's powering up and swapping things out. What do I mean by that? I'm gonna show you how you can reinvent your standard lunch. For me, it was maybe a grilled cheese sandwich or a bologna sandwich. I'm gonna show you how you can do a sandwich that's healthier for you. So we're gonna talk about reinventing your standard lunch by putting more nutritious things in. And so add in nutritious food items whenever and wherever possible. Avoid highly processed foods and make the best choices. So I'll be talking to you about that. If you like crunchy chips with your lunch, maybe there's some other crunchy things we can introduce that are more healthy for you. Eating out, this is where you want to research the healthier options in advance, meaning there are some restaurants out there, even if they're a fast food chain restaurant, you can actually find some at least better options versus maybe the standard fare. And one of the things I suggest people doing is looking at a website, looking what's on the menu before you go, and maybe looking instead of at the main dishes, there's a lot of healthier choices often in the appetizers or the side dishes at a restaurant. So here is a recipe that it's kind of a no recipe, but I've called it the souped up canned soup because if you aren't aware, canned soup is a wonderful convenience food, but you may not be aware how much sodium is in canned soup and maybe some other types of things that maybe you are causing or that you're wanting to avoid in your foods. Well, one of the things to do is become a conscious food consumer and look at the food label, try to find a low sodium vegetable soup. But I have these on my pantry shelf right now. When I am really busy, what I can do is I can pull one of my low sodium vegetable soup cans from my pantry. I dump it into a pan, and then to help right away reduce the sodium and extend what I have in that pan and add more liquid, but also add some wonderful antioxidants through the tomatoes, I am going to add a can of low sodium diced tomatoes. I'm also then going to add a cup of cooked vegetables. Now this could be frozen or canned, but just by introducing a cup of cooked vegetables, I'm adding some what I call a chew factor to the soup because most canned soup don't have much texture in them. And I'm adding more wonderful nutrients. I'm typically adding fiber as well. And then to add some protein source to this soup can, I am going to add a cup of cooked beans. And then on top of that, 2 cups of fresh greens or a half cup of cooked greens. So right then and there, I've done 2 things by putting these items together. I've added great nutritional value. I've added more texture and flavor, and I've extended what I started out with. So now I can actually serve more people with this can of soup. But let's not stop there. We can actually, for extra credit, we can shake in some added spices for some wonderful antioxidants and some extra flavor. And then you've kind of almost created this wonderful, flavorful stew that you could, if you had some leftover rice, or you could do some quick cooking rice, you could put this on top of, and now you've created a hearty meal. So I just wanted to share one of the kind of tips and tricks to using a standard convenience item that you could take home with you today. Now, when it comes to leftovers, I find that leftovers are meal savers. And this is what I mean by that. So whenever I'm cooking a favorite meal, I will double batch that meal. So I am a family now of 2. I used to be a family of 4, but I still cook like I'm a family of 4. Because again, I'm already in the kitchen. I will be able to save myself some time down the road. And if I double batch that meal, I can put it into lunch-sized containers to either put into my freezer for really, really busy weeks, or I can put them in my fridge for later in the week. I can also use leftovers if I've served a meal that my husband and I love, 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 and we maybe ate seconds of it the night before. And maybe I just have a little bit of a stir fry from Monday evening. And maybe on Wednesday, I have a little bit left over from a quinoa dish or what have you. They add up in my fridge, and then I use these leftovers to create a meal, which I'll show you during the cooking demonstration. And then you can use remaining prep items, meal prep items, to create a meal. So whenever I'm chopping and dicing in my kitchen, let's say I'm cutting up a bunch of scallions to use on top of a chili. Well, guess what? I'll probably chop a couple extra and I'll put them in a little glass container so that I could use those scallions maybe to top a salad or to put inside a wrap. Same thing goes for carrots and celery or red peppers. Just be kind of thinking ahead, especially if a recipe calls for a half a cup of red bell pepper. Well, typically a whole bell pepper gives you a whole entire cup of chopped bell pepper. Well, don't just chop your half and then store the other half to use later, which you may not do, and then it becomes food waste because you forget about it. Instead, chop it up, put it in a glass container so that you see it in your fridge to use for introducing into soups and salads and that kind of thing. So let's dive deeper into mealing prep with lunch intention. A lot of times we focus on breakfast because it's the, starts our day. We know we need to start it off right. And when we start incorporating more plants, we focus on maybe a wonderful nourishing bowl of oatmeal. And we've learned how to, prep breakfast with intention and having berries to go on that oatmeal or bananas and putting nuts and seeds in. Dinner time, that's the time where we're with our family and we may have more time to spend prepping for dinner time. But we want to not forget about prepping with intention for lunch. And so one of the things that I always have, and I feel like the world is a little bit off kilter if I don't have it in my fridge every week, is a batch of hummus or bean spread that I've either made myself or I've purchased at a local grocery store. And I'll show you during the cooking demonstration why it's so important to me. I chop fresh vegetables in store, which I've already referred to. And then one of the things I love to do, even during the summertime, is I prepare a pan of roasted vegetables. And this is something you can easily do while you're doing something else. And meaning like this, the other day I was doing laundry and I knew I was going to be doing this cooking demo, and I also wanted to have roasted vegetables for the week. So I just cut up some vegetables, some root vegetables, and I put them in my oven and was doing laundry and some other kind of stuff going on, and set the timer, and voila, it was done. I love roasted vegetables because they can be used in a variety of ways, which I'll be showing you. And when you roast vegetables, they become the flavor changes, and it most people enjoy roasted vegetables even over raw vegetables. And they're easier to digest typically as well. So I always encourage people to prepare a pan of roasted vegetables for the week. And then this is one thing I do is I focus on a different whole grain each week. And so one week it might be I do a batch of brown rice and I use it throughout the week in different recipes in different ways, and specifically at lunchtime. This week it's wheat berries. A week ago it was oat groats. So you can do a different grain. And why you want to do a different grain? A couple reasons. Again, so you don't get bored of eating the same thing over and over. Two, again, we want to create nutritional diversity in our diet. And so this is one way I consciously do that and not get stuck in a rut, because I want all my little happy bacteria in my stomach to be feeding on all these different types of nutrients that are introduced to it through the diversity of my diet. Identify simple flavor builders. And by flavor builders, I will talk a little bit more about this in more detail, but what I'm kind of alluding to are things that you love, that you enjoy. It could be a condiment, it could be spices, it could be pickled vegetables, it could be different things that you enjoy the flavor of that you could use at lunchtime. And then I always prepare a quick sauce or salad dressing for the week, so that I can use it in different ways at lunchtime. And I'll be showing you a quick recipe on what I mean by that. But let me just dive even deeper into what I consider my lunch food staples in my household. For convenience and versatility, I encourage people to have, like I mentioned, a bean dip or hummus. If you haven't heard of Juliana Hever, she is the plant-based dietitian, and she considers hummus its own separate food group. And I kind of do too, that it should be it's so wonderful and yummy and can be used in so many ways. So another item is salsa. You can use salsa in so many different ways at lunchtime. We always associate it with dips or chips and salsa, but you can use salsa as a quick salad dressing, and when you're in a pinch, or to add flavor inside a wrap. And so I always encourage people to have salsa. Colorful vegetables, either fresh and cooked, and I'll show you examples how I use both raw and cooked vegetables at lunchtime. And then having prepared beans and pasta and potatoes, whole grain options. I've already talked about the grain of the week. It could be brown rice or quinoa, but don't forget, you can also use whole grain options of bread and tortillas. And I'll kind of give some examples of some of the items that I use in my household. And then having fresh greens washed and chopped and at the ready. Greens, you want to get them in. I always try to say every meal that you can, or at least lunch and dinner, if that's more comfortable for you. But greens are so nutrient dense and wonderful for your bodies. And then finally, I want to just talk about flavor and variety. And this is where I was talking about, identifying things that you love to eat and trying to put or incorporate them into your lunch. So condiments, I love Dijon mustard, vinegars of all types. Explore the world of vinegars, I say. Lemon juice or orange juice, lime juice, tahini, which is a sesame seed paste, soy sauce or coconut aminos, hot sauce, sriracha, anything can be used at lunchtime to add flavor and build interest. And then easy throw-ins, again, to incorporate taste and texture, things like sun-dried tomatoes, capers, green chilies, pickled vegetables. And then toppers that are so easy, seeds and crushed nuts to help you get some of those healthy omega-3 fatty acids into your diet and add some fun texture, spices and spice blends, fresh herbs, and then a sauce of the week. One week it could be a red sauce. Maybe make a big batch of your favorite red sauce because you're making a pasta dish. Well, you can then use that red sauce in different ways for your lunches. And then another week it could be a pesto sauce, or it could be a cashew cream sauce. And then a nut or seed-based sauce based on like a tahini garlic sauce. And so I just wanted to point that out to you. And then here, I'd open it up and let you see inside it, but I thought I'd take a picture of my fridge. This is how it was a couple weeks ago. And it's kind of a typical day inside my fridge. By not staged, I mean, I did, like, so that you could see it well, I did move things around so you could see it, but these are things I always have in my fridge. So, I have that grain of the week that I'm pointing out there. I had some leftovers. I have some packaged convenience kind of green beans, a bag of green beans here. I have some sauces. I have up here at the top my nuts and flaxseed that I can throw in, my spices. My condiments are on the sides. You can't see those very well, but these are all the things that I have that I can create and pull from to make nutritious lunches. So how do I make some of these things that I keep in my fridge? I thought I'd share with you a very, very simple salad dressing that can be turned into a sauce if you want, a more elaborate sauce, because I find that dressings, sauces, dips, and spreads, whether you are a omnivore, a carnivore, an herbivore, wherever you fall in the spectrum, we all love dressing, sauces, dips, and spreads. And there's a reason for that, because they are typically filled with flavor, things that are luscious on our tongue, and they help balance out flavor in the other things we're eating. So I want to teach you just a real simple salad dressing that makes 2 servings, and I'll be showing it to you during the cooking demo. But rather than create the salad dressing, since it's so super silly easy, I thought I'd show you during the cooking demo how I actually use it. So the simple salad dressing is a 1/4 cup of fresh lemon juice. It can come from an actual lemon, or if you have a jar of lemon juice, you could use that. Or if you don't have that, maybe you forgot the lemon juice, have always some white vinegar of choice, whether it's a white wine or a rice vinegar, will work in this dressing as well. So a 1/4 cup of either of those liquid ingredients, and then 2 tablespoons of Dijon style mustard. I always share in all my cooking classes, I think, that Dijon mustard is a true secret ingredient. A lot of chefs use it, professional chefs. It adds a little bitter note, but a little spicy note. It's something we all really typically enjoy, especially when it's mixed with an acid or acidic ingredient like lemon juice or vinegar. And then to help balance things out, let's incorporate a little sweetener. You could use a teaspoon up to a tablespoon of maple syrup. That is it. Those 3 items you whisk together or shake up in a little jar, and that's a very a very simple salad dressing, but you can add in to make it even more complex depending on what you want to serve it with. You could add in some crushed garlic, whether it's raw or roasted. You could add in a tablespoon of tahini for some luscious, thick, rich note to it. Some capers or soy sauce or miso for some added saltiness. Nutritional yeast flakes, which if you aren't familiar with, I can show you during the cooking demo, but you can get that at health conscious grocery stores for a savory, cheesy note, and then spices and herbs. You could even add some non-dairy yogurt like I'm showing here. There's different things you can do to heighten this simple salad dressing. And then finally, I have to highlight this wonderful recipe by our friends at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, who created this recipe called the Irresistible White Bean Dip. And if you aren't familiar with them, you can go to pcrm.org, just type in white bean dip and it'll pull it up. But here it is, and I can provide it to the partnership here, and they can put it with this video. But it's really a very basic, or I shouldn't say basic, it's a heightened kind of white bean dip. And so let me just walk you through quickly, and I'm going to show you different ways that I use this white bean dip, because it is a family favorite and it's been that way for several years. And if I don't watch my husband, he eats it all almost in a whole sitting. That's how good it is. And the reason why it's so tasty is it has some wonderful flavor enhancing ingredients. You start out with a can of rinsed and drained white beans. It could be any white bean of your choice. What I typically do is I double batch this. I batch this recipe and I double it. So I will typically use like garbanzo beans as one of my can of beans. And then I will put in a different white bean, such as a navy bean or a cannellini bean or a butter bean. And for added kind of rich texture to it, smooth texture, that's what I do. And so I will double it and use 2 cans of beans. And then there is lemon juice that's traditional in like a hummus recipe, and that adds some acidity. We are adding white or yellow miso. And if you're not familiar with miso, again, they're starting to have that. It's available usually in the refrigerated section at grocery stores. And it's a fermented soybean paste, and it adds a little saltiness and savoriness to whatever you add it to. And I would recommend, there's different colors, go for white or yellow for this type of bean dip. It's a little bit lighter in flavor and won't discolor the white bean dip also. If you want, they call for sea salt and black salt on top of the miso. If you're watching your sodium intake or you're sensitive to salt, I don't need as much salt anymore because I've really cut it out of my diet a lot. So I tend to omit the sea salt, and maybe I'll just use some of the black salt. The tahini is added for kind of that traditional hummus type flavor. That's what's found in most hummus recipes. And the nutritional yeast that I mentioned adds a savory, cheesy note. And then you can add some raw garlic, or you could use roasted garlic. I like that added smoky sweetness if I've had the time to roast my garlic. And then a little bit of optional maple syrup. And so you whisk this all together, adding water to the consistency that you prefer. And it comes together and makes a most flavorful, wonderful white bean dip that you can use in numerous ways. So that's what I want to do, is show you the different ways that I use these 2 recipes and how I just operate in creating lunch in my kitchen. I'm going to dive into and move over to the glorious food section and demonstrate for you just some numerous ways that you can create lunch in your own kitchen. As I mentioned, I grew up as a latchkey kid, and sandwiches were my staple. I was responsible for making my own lunch, and so it was always a sandwich. And as I mentioned, a lot of times it was deli meat or PB&J. But now I make a more nutrition-oriented type sandwich. And I want to talk about bread choice real quick. And what I would recommend is, when you are looking for bread, is look for bread that has not a whole lot of ingredients. And the first ingredient is really what you want. Is if it's whole wheat you're looking for, it should say whole wheat on the package, or sprouted wheat or something like that. And so I tend to, not that I want to talk about brands in particular, but I find this is a very reliable brand that's in all grocery stores now, and that usually in the freezer section. And you can do sandwiches not just out of traditional loaf bread, this is the loaf bread, but you can mix things up just by changing what you put your sandwich on. So this is actually their buns, or I also love their English muffins. And so that's just a very simple way to kind of change things up a little bit in regards to getting boredom out of the picture. I also, especially if it's portable, but even if you want your lunch to be portable, like you're taking your sandwich to work. But even when I'm at home, I almost always toast my bread. And the reason for that is it makes it more stable in the sense that if you have some liquidy type ingredients, it's not going to then push through on the other side. It stays together and transports more easily. Here is the irresistible white bean dip. And this is a double batch of that white bean dip. I didn't tell my husband I made it, so that it is still here for the cooking demo. And otherwise I have to like put a note on it because otherwise he will gobble it up. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to spread on one side this wonderful white bean dip, and it's going to service me in a couple different ways. A lot of times when I would make bologna sandwiches, I would put mayonnaise on one side and then mustard on the other side. I am actually going to use this in place of mayonnaise, which isn't very healthy for us. Doesn't hold a lot of nutritious qualities to it. And so I am now introducing a protein source that has a lot of flavor already that will be introduced into my sandwich. The next thing I'm going to do on the other side is I'm going to do my Dijon mustard. And the Dijon mustard for me is just, I love mustard. Not so crazy about yellow mustard, but I love all sorts of like Dijon or stone ground or spiced up mustards because they add some pizzazz to the sandwich. It's all about sauces, dips, and spreads, in my opinion. The next thing I'm going to introduce here is if I was doing like a deli sandwich, I would have the deli meat in here. Well, I want some chew. I want some additional flavor that deli meat typically has. And so what I'm doing is I'm actually introducing some zucchini that I have marinated in, that I cooked really like almost, I don't want to say flash cooked, but I took a non-stick skillet yesterday. And while I was making a batch of this for yesterday for our lunch, I did a double batch so I could show you here. I just took a non-stick skillet. I had sliced a zucchini like this into quarters, like long ways. And I just, no water, nothing in the non-stick skillet over medium heat. I just cooked those four long slices, and flipped it every couple of minutes until I got these nice little char marks on the zucchini, took it off the burner, introduced a little bit of balsamic vinegar and a little bit of raw garlic. And voila, I had kind of this wonderful flavor enhancer to my sandwich. And it's going to provide a lot of wonderful chew. And then I just stored it in the fridge so that I could have it for the cooking demo today, but it was part of our lunch yesterday. And that's kind of how I do things. If I'm going to cook once, I'm going to try to do maybe a double batch so I can then use it in different ways throughout the week. All right, so here's how I do things. What do I have maybe that I want to put on top of this zucchini sandwich, hummus sandwich? Well, I have some cucumber I'm going to introduce. And this cucumber, what I did here, sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just cut up cucumber so I have it for salads during the evening. And I just cut it up fresh and just put it in a glass jar. What I did here, what you could do simply is I drizzled a little bit of white wine vinegar over that and kind of made a quick pickling of that cucumber. And then I also introduced some dill to give it that pickled flavor. It's not truly pickled per se, but it's going to give me that kind of pickle quality without introducing pickles that tend to have lots and lots of sodium. So that's why I did what I did. I'm going to add some tomatoes. I'm going to add some arugula for some peppery, spicy note. And that is my sandwich. Let me just get a knife to cut that in half. I am going to put it on my plate. If I wanted, I could serve it with some cut up like celery or carrots. But what I'm going to just really quickly showcase you is during summertime when there are some great sales going on fruits, you can just go ahead and serve it, with a little bit of colorful different varieties of fruit that I pulled from my fridge. But this is your kind of typical standard sandwich, I guess you'd say, that I have reinvented to be healthier and more flavorful than just a typical deli sandwich. So let's not stop there. We're going to continue the portable lunch realm, and I am going to do one of my favorite things that I love to eat, and that's a wrap. And so I am pulling a whole wheat wrap out. And if you are new to kind of more healthful way of eating, you're trying to incorporate those luscious greens that we keep talking about, but maybe you want to hide them a little bit. There's a couple things you can do. I like to use collard greens in my wraps. And there's a couple reasons why I like to do that. One, I can easily get some nutritious greens in there, but I still have the wonderful kind of texture, the whole wheat tortilla. It also is a barrier. If you think about it, sometimes when you're wrapping a tortilla, it like breaks through and everything starts seeping out, especially if you're transporting things to work, or you're going to go for a hike or something like that. I like to introduce collard greens because they're going to add structure to my wrap. You can technically, if you wanted to, you can actually, I've done this for my husband and myself, you could actually make wraps out of just collard greens themselves. They are super bendable. See how I can just kind of whoop, whoop, whoop. There it is. You can do it that way. But I am just going to incorporate it into my tortilla. And I had to get smaller tortillas. They didn't have the bigger tortillas. So I'm going to try to, make it so that it will fit in here. All right, so here's my collard green, my tortilla. Again, I'm using the irresistible white bean dip, but I'm using it in a different way. So yesterday, maybe I ate the sandwich. Let's say today I'm doing the wrap, and I'm going to put in some colorful red cabbage. I am going to put in some roasted red bell peppers. That's one of those favorite topper or flavor enhancers that I like to have on hand are red bell peppers. Either I do them myself, but if I'm running out of time, I have these in my pantry and I can pull a jar out because they add a wonderful roasted smoky quality and kind of heighten whatever they're added to. So I'm going to do that here. Let's see here. I'm going to add some scallions, and notice that I have this little tiny thing of scallions. I didn't just do it for the cooking demo. It's actually from a couple days ago. I had chopped up a bunch of scallions and I had way too many of them. And so that's how it lives in my fridge until I use them up. So I'm going to put some scallions in there. And then remember that salad dressing I told you about, that 3 ingredients, the 1/4 cup of lemon juice and the 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard and the tablespoon of maple syrup. That is what's in here. And so I'm going to drizzle a little bit in here. And because I have that protection of the collard green, I'm not so scared that's going to leak through. I'm going to add a little bit more arugula in here. Let's see what else. This is kind of how I do things. I'm just looking around my kitchen here, like what's around me. I'm going to add some paprika. What the heck? I'm going to add some spice to that. And you know what? This is the nutritional yeast I was talking about. There's a couple different brands I have in my kitchen here. This is most commonly seen across most, I think, grocery stores. And so that's what it looks like. It's these little yellow flakes. And I am going to just shake to add a little bit more savory, cheesy to my wrap. All right, I'm going to start folding. Give it a little press here. And there's the wrap. Beautiful kind of rainbow stuff going on. That's what you kind of want to do for in your meals, is try to shoot for color, lots of color. And so this is another way you could have a nutritious lunch. You can grab things like this, sweet mini peppers, to just kind of grab and go for those really busy lunches. And then last but not least, one of the things I really like that I do often is I create a bowl, and you can call it a Buddha bowl, a Nourish bowl, whatever you want to call it. But it's kind of my my lunchtime bowl that saves me and helps me use up foods that I'm kind of just like, I have too much of, but they're just little quantities and I can't make a whole dinner out of it. This is where the Nourish bowl kind of saves my bacon sometimes. So I am going to show you, for instance, let's see here. There's several things I could put in this bowl. This is what I have in my fridge. This is reality here. This was from a dinner that I actually can make maybe another dinner out of that for me and my husband. But this is a quinoa, lentil, apricot kind of dish. I could introduce that in here. I could, if I wanted. And so that's a leftover. This is more my style that, oh, you know what? I only have maybe enough for me. This is a broccoli salad. So you know what? I am going to put that into my, using up a leftover. I'm going to put that in here and have all sorts of just different things in it. So that's great. I'm using up that leftover so it doesn't spoil. And my husband and I, this will be my bowl. He's gone for lunch today, so this will be my lunch, I think. So I am looking at what else I could put in here. Okay, here is my grain of the week that I batch cooked that I did a couple days ago. It's been sitting in my fridge. And I'm going to add some more chew into this by putting some of these wonderful nourishing wheat berries in here. But it could be brown rice. It could be whatever you decide to batch cook or make or try to use up. Here's those roasted vegetables I was talking about. I have some turnips and I had like 6 little carrots that I threw in there because I had to use them up, those baby carrots. And then some Japanese sweet potatoes, some traditional sweet potatoes. And I'm gonna just like throw those in there for kind of like dipping, I guess you would say. And then guess what? Because I love the irresistible white bean dip, I'm gonna throw that in there. And then when I'm ready to sit down, I could drizzle it with my salad dressing to kind of just add some additional flavor to this this Nourish bowl is what I would call it. And so that is kind of like a meal that I would serve. It looks super fancy, in my opinion. It looks like something you could maybe order from a restaurant, and you could even make it fancier and add some of those like toppers like I was talking about, like some pepitas, pumpkin seeds. And you can just like enjoy your lunch. And it becomes something that you want to eat, that you can eat. And it doesn't take a lot of time to create things like this. When you do some thinking ahead, batch cooking, I guess I'll just leave that there for the beautiful end note, I guess. If you just use your time wisely and think about how you can rethink how lunch should be served in your household. what I love, because I always learn something at every class, and I want some kind of interaction here. Like, what are some ways that you do lunch in your house that you would like to share, that maybe is along this vein of like making lunch more exciting, or making lunch more accessible or enjoyable? Or how do you do lunch? I'm going to throw it open to everyone to start chatting a little bit. And if you want to use the chat box, if you don't want to open up your microphone, that's fine too. But I'd love to hear from you.